We are getting started with the first session of the day, and I'm very, very happy to have a customer with me on stage. We will tell you how you can create more resilient supply chains and freeing up cash that is stuck in your supply chain. There are studies that are actually saying up to 40 trillion of liquidity is stuck in the supply chain. Others say only 14 trillion. I think still a big enough number. Our mission from SAP is to really provide an end-to-end solution that helps you to improve your working capital management. I'm Thomas Wehrkopf. I'm the General Manager for Working Capital Management at SAP. I'm very happy to have you all here. When we talk about working capital management, for us, it's really about planning, analyzing, and then really also driving the execution. And a lot of the planning and analyzing is happening in the S4. That's where your processes are. That's where you really improve your AP and AR processes. But when it comes to the execution, that's where Taulia that plays the big role as our working capital financing platform. And it's the only platform out in the market that is really covering payables, receivables, and inventory financing. We are part of the SAP Business Network to really foster also the supplier collaboration. But with that, I really want to get started here with our customer and welcome Ashifa from TELUS on stage. Thank you so much, Ashifa, for joining us. Ashifa is the Director of Procurement and responsible for approximately 3 billion of spend. She's also a very big advocate on supplier diversity and DE&I. Working capital is a big topic for TELUS. Can you share a little bit about your drivers?
Definitely, a really important thing for a lot of companies right now is their cash flow. And at TELUS, we are buying a lot of companies and growing pretty exponentially. When I started at TELUS, it was more of a Canadian company. Now it's a global company. And in order to be able to buy companies and grow through acquisition, we would need to have different cash flow. I don't want to borrow. I don't think that is going to impact you. So when we looked at that, we ran the numbers, did our due diligence with Taulia. They helped us around figuring out what the potential benefit could be and how much cash flow we could free up by putting in supply chain financing, and we also looked at our payment terms. We did a bit of research around payment terms in our industry and found that even though payment terms were similar across other telecommunication companies, the DPO was very different. So other companies were paying in sometimes 120 days. And so we had 60 days payment terms and decided that we would run some numbers, and we looked at numbers at 90 days, at 120, and decided to pursue 90 days payment terms as part of this process. And if you don't know what supply chain financing is, just at a really high level, you set up whatever your payment terms are, and they're on your invoice. Customers know that is your payment terms. But they have the opportunity to get paid earlier by going through supply chain financing and leveraging TELUS's borrowing rate, which they would never be able to get our borrowing rate. So they can get paid in early as 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, whatever they choose. And so there's a discount that's taken from their invoice, and then they get paid earlier. And then TELUS would pay the bank, whatever the 90 days or whatever it is. So that helps us keep more of our money for a longer period of time, and that obviously impacts cash flow in a positive way.
You were talking a little bit already about objectives. Can you maybe share a little bit more how you measure success and what your concrete objectives are?
Yeah, definitely. We did set up goals around that, and you do need to be careful when you're going through the data around the actual invoices that we can affect, because you're not going to be able to affect all of them. There are certain things you're going to need to pay, whether it's through legislation or certain payment terms for certain companies. You need to pay in for PPEs or whatever it's going to be. So we looked at our numbers and at a high level figured out what we could gain. And that was really the catalyst and part of the business impact and our ROI to understand if we're anything to pursue those.
Can you maybe share also with the audience a little bit of the tips and tricks you think are super important to set you up for success? I mean, your program is really successful. So what would you say are things you can share with this audience that are important?
We had a goal and we communicated this to our CFO. So I had to deliver on it once they gave it in. So you're going to do your analysis of what you're currently paying, how much you're paying per month, and then if you are changing your payment terms, you need to put in something for your suppliers so they can get it earlier. We already had Taulia as a partner for dynamic discounting, but I'm in procurement, so we do need to go to our payments policy. And as much as I love Taulia, I had to put all of that aside and do a fair process. In the end, we actually did end up choosing Taulia for our supply chain financing. And so you just need to be really clear on the benefits, right? What's your working capital gain? Do you have a program in place for the suppliers? Because you can't really devastate them with changing your payment terms and not having options for them. So you should definitely have that set up. And then you need to understand your budget, right? So it's actually not expensive to put this into place. It was actually very cost effective to put this system in place. And Taulia does all of the heavy lifting for us. So that was really great. We're a great partner that way. Like I mentioned, we already have it for dynamic discounting. So we literally had to turn on the supply chain financing piece of it. But there is a whole execution involved, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then your team. So you want to make sure that you're engaging the right working team up front. So we have obviously a project manager, which I could not do this whole thing without because I'm useless when it comes to project managing, but we had a really strong one. And then we engaged finance, treasury, actually privacy, legal, just all different kinds of people that were involved in all the things that we needed to get done. And for this project, accounts payable was really, really key because we needed them as a strong partner in helping us execute on things like communication to our suppliers. So internally, what we did was we sent out kind of a company-wide notice that we're changing our payment terms from 60 days to 90 days. And if any of our businesses had contracts that we weren't aware of, as in procurement, we're not centralized, so we may not have visibility to all the contracts that are out there that have specified payment terms. So we asked the company to send us any contracts they had so we were aware. And then the plan is, are you going to open up that contract to change the payment terms? Are you going to wait till it expires and you have a renewal coming up? Is it legislated? Like in Canada, we have payment legislation around some of our contractors that work in the field. So we had to do that little due diligence internally. So internal communications is really, really important. Everybody needs to know what you're doing. Nobody should be surprised. And all of your team members need to advocate and be supportive of that message to their suppliers and prepare them that this change is coming. And we gave them, I think, 6 months notice that we're going to be changing the inventory. So that was helpful.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about what the ESG initiatives are that you're driving at TELUS already?
I think everybody is probably very involved in sustainability in their company. And at TELUS, they issue sustainability bonds. And that really means we have to do what we say or we pay. So it's part of our ESG. We worked on a climate action plan. So working on, I think right now we're at 127 or 128 of our top suppliers that we're working on scope 3 emissions and reporting for that. We're part of the JAC audit. So that's all the telcos globally that are working together to ensure that we can bring our suppliers along for the ride on the sustainability journey. Within our RFPs themselves, we have a 10% weighted scoring for sustainability and diversity so that it actually matters if you're doing the work. And our tier 1 suppliers should be working with diverse suppliers where they can. And with supplier due diligence. So I'm sure a lot of companies have screening processes for their onboarding suppliers, and that's really part of our CSR as well, to make sure that they are, viable and that they're profitable. We have, the relations and less risk with those suppliers. So that's a big part of the work that we're doing that's very embedded in our process.
Now, of course, you are on an SAP event, right? So I want to give you also the opportunity to maybe raise one thing where you would say, if Taulia and SAP would provide this will really help you to further improve your program and fits very well into your procurement vision. What would this be?
For my procurement vision, I would love a source-to-pay process that is embedded AI and is intuitive. Right now, we're in the transformation stage, but it's fairly early. We're doing an S/4HANA implementation, and that's not done overnight. But I would love to see all of these things that I've mentioned: diversity, sustainability, working capital, all of those things embedded into a workflow that, from onboarding the supplier, they're in there including performance and all of these other things that we like as procurement people to just be able to push a button and be able to take a look at where we're at and a status with the supplier. So I know it's in the works, and I'm here for it. I really want to see that happen. At least before I die, I'd like to be able to say there's a full source-to-pay process that's automated and definitely needs AI embedded in it.
Point taken, absolutely. You have heard here at the event already that we are embedding Joule in all our applications, so there is the AI component coming. The good news is also, of course, Taulia is already embedded into the SAP Business Network, formerly known as Ariba Network, as well as S4. To your point, that's so critical because it's always about finance and procurement working together on these programs. So it needs to be from an organizational perspective, target perspective, but also system perspective, really working together. And we are working on the other topics on the sales to pay as well. Is there any last recommendation you would give people who have not looked into this area yet, how to get started?
The data, right? That's the most important thing. So understand your data, understand your suppliers, your current payment terms, what's the opportunity, because that is your business case. That's the ROI that you're going to take to your CFO. And then look at what kind of funding you're going to need for that project. Make sure you have the right people at the table to help you execute it. And luckily for us, Taulia is a very strong partner, and they helped guide us along the whole way with things like external communications to the suppliers. They worked with us at our bank to do the outreach to the suppliers, have concert with suppliers, because just sending emails is not going to be enough. And sometimes they're going to think it's spam. So having a very strong follow-up with the suppliers is key to getting them onboarded. And we've seen success when we've actually done that. Understand the data, know your return, and that's what's going to sell it internally. And then just have a very strong execution path. And I'm happy to share more details with anybody who wants to talk about that.